I'm Graham, 37, a quiet tech guy from Georgia, who no one in my family ever took seriously. At dinner, I asked my sister for a $150 loan to help a student whose mom was fighting cancer, and she laughed, then said, "Be sure to say grace for that beggar." They didn't know I'd built a system that held $5.5 million, or that I was about to pull it, right through her bank. The smell of catfish and hush puppies still clung to my jacket as I watched her screen freeze, and her knees follow. If you've ever let silence do the talking, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? I pulled into the gravel driveway just after midnight. The porch light was still on. Same bulb, same glow, like nothing ever changed in this town, except the people pretending they had. The tires crunched over old pine needles and damp stone, and for a second, I just sat there, engine ticking, watching that house like it might say something first. It didn't. The house on Magnolia Lane hadn't changed much. White siding that never quite looked clean, shutters that sagged a little more with each passing season. The porch swing still leaned left, and the smell, somewhere between boiled collards and damp rug, hit the moment I opened the car door. Smells like that never left fabric, or memories. I hadn't been home in 7 years. The funeral last spring didn't count. That was obligation, not return. This, whatever this was, felt different. Not closure, not forgiveness. Just a full circle I hadn't asked to trace. The door creaked open before I knocked. "You still remember which room is yours?" my mother asked, holding the frame like it might walk away from her. Her hair had grayed more than I remembered. Her voice, too, thin, cautious, like she wasn't sure how many words I'd come back for. I stepped inside without answering. The hallway still had the same faded runner rug with the wine-stained Celeste swore wasn't hers. The light above the staircase flickered once, then steadied. Some things really didn't change. And then there was her car. Celeste's silver SUV was already in the driveway, tucked too neatly in the spot Dad used to claim before Sunday dinners turned into calendar invitations no one accepted. Of course she was here. Always was. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come," Mom said, closing the door behind me. "Figured Dallas had swallowed you up by now." "It spits me back out sometimes," I said. I didn't take off my coat. She hovered in the entryway. "You hungry? I can heat something. There's ham. Or chicken." "I'm fine." The word echoed a little too loud in the narrow hall. She motioned toward the stairs. "Your room's still yours, though I did put some boxes in the closet, things we didn't know what to do with." "We didn't. Not you. Not me. We." "I'll take care of them," I said. I walked past her before the conversation became anything heavier than air. The bedroom door stuck a little. Still, I had to shoulder it open. Inside, the bed was made too tightly. The pillowcases were ironed, and on the dresser, someone had dusted recently. But the air still smelled like old paperbacks and the sweat of forgotten summers. I dropped my duffel by the wall, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wood grain on the floor. 7 years. No calls unless someone was dying or needed help finding a password. No visits. No questions. The clock in the kitchen ticked loud enough to reach upstairs. The rooster one with the chipped beak and numbers faded to smudges. Every second, a reminder that time passed differently here. Slower, but heavier. I went down after a few minutes. The light above the table cast a warm glow over chipped plates and a pitcher of iced tea that had begun to sweat. Mom sat already. One chair between us was empty. "The tea's fresh," she said. "Still like it sweet?" I didn't answer. I poured myself half a glass and left it untouched. We sat in silence. Forks clicked against ceramic. I didn't ask where Celeste was. I knew she'd arrive when it best suited her timing, and when she could make a point with it. After several minutes, Mom cleared her throat. Your sister's been holding things down here. Not easy managing family without—" She trailed off. "Without you." She didn't say it. Didn't need to. I nodded slowly. Not because I agreed, but because I'd learned a long time ago that nodding cost less than arguing. "She's been doing her best," Mom added. "I thought you should know that." I pushed the plate slightly forward. The roast was overcooked. Or maybe it was just me. "I'll head up," I said. She nodded too, but hers felt like relief. Back upstairs, I unzipped the duffel and pulled out the laptop, still tucked in its sleeve like a secret. I placed it on the desk beside the window, opened it, and entered the first passphrase. Then the second. Then the third. Shellcore Holdings blinked to life. $5.5 million. Liquid. Untouched. It wasn't for show. It wasn't revenge. It was built in silence, over years, line by line of code, contract, and compliance. And no one in this house had the faintest idea who really ran it. A text popped up on the side of the screen. "Noah. Still sure it's time." I stared at it for a long moment, then reached into the bottom of the duffel, pulled out the old leather-bound notebook, the one I started when I was 10, dreaming of things I wasn't allowed to say out loud. I placed it beside the laptop. It looked smaller now. Worn. But still mine. And for the first time that night, I exhaled like something in me had landed. Celeste breezed in the next evening in heels and judgment. She smelled like citrus and superiority, her perfume sweeping through the room half a second before she did, like a prelude to her presence. She kissed Mom on the cheek without sitting, set down her designer bag like it needed its own place at the table, and said, "Sorry I'm late. Emergency meeting with regional." Her tone made it sound like the state of Georgia had waited on her decision. Emily followed, softer but just as polished, balancing a tray of cornbread and compliments. Walter trailed behind, still wearing his work polo and looking like he hadn't had an original thought since noon. Dinner at Mom's hadn't changed. Catfish, hush puppies. Sweet tea so thick it could hold a spoon upright. And silence, the kind that usually follows funerals or failures. I sat across from Celeste, diagonally from Mom, the seat I used to call mine when Dad was still around. He would have sat at the head, cleared his throat at every lull in conversation, and told us about something dull we should all pretend mattered. Funny how a chair could stay exactly where it was, but lose all its weight once someone was gone. Emily passed the sweet potatoes. Walter commented on the weather. Celeste poured herself water from a glass pitcher that didn't match the rest of the set. Then I said it. "I just need a quick loan," I began, keeping my voice even. $150. A student I mentor. His mom's in chemo. He's behind on tuition. Deadline's tomorrow. Celeste paused, fork midair. Then she scoffed, slicing into her catfish with all the grace of a paper cut. "Still rescuing strays, huh?" Emily chuckled like someone who knew better than to get involved. Walter kept chewing. Mom didn't look up from her plate. I cleared my throat. "He's 16. Smart. Quiet. Reminds me of—" "No," Celeste interrupted. "He doesn't. He reminds you of some version of yourself you wish we all mourned harder." There it was. No seasoning, just plain salt. "Celeste," Mom murmured. Not really a reprimand, more of a speed bump. Celeste leaned back in her chair and dabbed at her lips with a napkin. "What's your ROI on this charity case, Graham? Emotional fulfillment? Does he send thank you notes with stickers?" They laughed. I didn't. Their laughter wasn't new, but it echoed longer this time, maybe because I was older. Maybe because I'd already begun to forget what it sounded like when I used to try to earn their respect. I folded my napkin and stood. "Where are you going?" Mom asked, still not looking at me. "Just out back," I said, even though it wasn't a question that needed answering. The screen door hissed behind me, shut with that familiar slap that once meant summer and now just meant escape. The porch light was still on. I leaned against the railing, let my hand trail along the old wood. My fingers found the spot where my initials had once been carved. G-double-Y, rough, uneven, stubborn. My father sanded them off that summer, said the house wasn't mine to mark. I still remembered how the dust caught the afternoon sun, like tiny bits of me being scraped away. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the secure app, typed one sentence. Pull the withdrawal protocol. The message sent. No hesitation. No echo. Behind me, the door creaked open. Celeste's voice, sugar-coated and sharp. Be sure to say grace for that $150. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the dark, laptop screen casting pale blue across my hands. The cursor blinked steady, patient. Shellcore Holdings pulsed at the center of the dashboard, quiet, massive, waiting. It had been built in silence. But now, it would speak for me. Dallas was 5 hours behind me and 7 years removed. The apartment was still mine, though barely lived in now. Half-used books, unopened mail. The air a mix of dust and something metallic from the radiator that clicked when the heat kicked on. But this room, this was where I built it. Line by line, rule by rule. Shell companies nested within shell companies. Trusts layered across borders. All of it legal, all of it invisible. And now, all of it ready. A low buzz vibrated from my phone. Noah. I answered without greeting. He didn't need one. If we move now, he said, Celeste's branch won't know what hit them. I looked at the screen again, a long string of numbers waiting for execution. I'm not looking to burn it down, I said. I know. I hesitated. Then, do it. Noah exhaled on the other end. You okay? I closed my eyes. I'm tired of being broke on paper just to keep them comfortable. That was the truth of it. I had lived lean, on purpose, so they could keep pretending I was the underachiever, the dropout, the one they could pity without consequence. But this account, this system, had never needed applause. Just time. I reached for the leather-bound notebook next to the laptop, opened to the first page. Crayon scribbles from a 10-year-old with big ideas and no room to say them. One day, I'll have a vault, misspelled, underlined twice. It wasn't just the money. It was the fact that every time they dismissed me, they were stepping over something bigger than any of us. My fingers hovered over the enter key. Too long. Not out of fear. Out of grief. Grief for the version of me that used to explain, used to try. For the younger me who sat through Sunday dinners hoping someone would ask, "What are you working on these days?" No one ever did. I pressed enter. The screen shifted. Numbers confirmed. Protocol initiated. Shellcore Holdings. Withdrawal request. $5.5 million. Recipient. Graham Winslow. Verification. Authorized. Another click. Notification sent to Crescent Trust, Regional Office, Celeste's Bank. I sat back, silence thick in my chest, then stood and walked to the closet. Pulled down the wine-colored scarf folded neatly on the shelf. It wasn't for warmth, not in Texas. I traced the stitching, still intact. My grandfather had handed it to me the year I dropped out of graduate school. "Let them ignore you," he'd said. "It'll make the reveal sweeter." At the time, I thought he was trying to soften my disappointment. Now, I realized he was offering strategy. I tucked the scarf into my bag. Back at the desk, my screen blinked. "To Glinder invite more. Thursday, 9 a.m. Withdrawal review. Crescent Trust Branch." I didn't smile, but I didn't hesitate either. The air inside Crescent Trust smelled like eucalyptus and polished guilt. Something about the mix made me think of bleach and denial, clean enough to pass, but never clean enough to forget. I stepped through the glass doors at exactly 8:57 a.m. The scarf around my neck itched slightly. I didn't adjust it. I wore it not for comfort, not for show, but because I needed to feel something wrapped around me. Not warmth. Memory. I'd folded the folio 3 times that morning. Once when I zipped it into my bag. Once when I pulled it back out in the car. And once now, as I held it in both hands like an invitation only I knew was real. Inside, everything gleamed. White tile, silver accents, the glass partitions etched with phrases like financial future and personal service. Celeste was already in the lobby. Of course she was. She stood at the center like she owned the oxygen, laughing, mouth wide, voice perfectly calibrated for attention, with a mortgage officer who didn't dare interrupt. Then she saw me, and her face changed. It was like watching glass fog over in real time. She blinked once, then twice, and stepped forward, heels clicking sharp across tile. "Wow," she said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "Didn't think we served beggars here." A woman near the reception desk turned. A young teller behind the counter looked up, confused. I didn't flinch, just walked past her, toward the front desk, the folio firm in my hand. "I'm here to process a withdrawal," I said, placing the folder gently on the counter. "Shell Core Holdings." The teller blinked. Do you have an account number?" "Scan the QR in the back pocket." She opened the folio. Her eyes moved quickly, trained to spot fraud, inconsistencies, anything that didn't belong. Then she stopped. Her screen blinked red. Behind her, another terminal lit up with the same color. A third chirped, high, sharp. Like a fire alarm no one had been trained to respond to. 2 employees froze mid-walk. Celeste's voice cut across the lobby. "Excuse me." The branch manager appeared almost instantly, calm in a way only people in suits and damage control know how to be. "Sir," he said, gesturing toward the glass hallway, "would you mind stepping into our conference room?" I nodded, not out of politeness, just because it was time. The walk was short, 15 steps maybe, but every step felt like a mile across a bridge I'd built myself, brick by hidden brick, transaction by silent transaction. Inside the room, the temperature dropped, or maybe it just felt that way. Celeste stood at the glass wall now, watching. Her jaw tightened. Her nails clicked against her phone. Her eyes scanned every movement like she might find a glitch, a way to rewind the last 60 seconds. The manager opened the folio again. His face changed, just slightly, when he saw the signatures, the seals, the structure. Then he looked at me. "You are the authorized representative?" he asked quietly. "I am." He nodded once, tapped into his tablet, then paused. "Pending withdrawal request. $5.5 million, he read aloud. Celeste's knuckles went white. I watched her expression shift, not to shock, but to something colder. The recognition that she had missed something too big to control. "I don't understand," she said finally, her voice brittle. "This has to be a mistake." "It's not," I said simply. And I meant it. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't tilt my head or deliver a line rehearsed in anger. I just stood there and let the numbers speak for me. The system froze. Internal audit protocols triggered. Clients were quietly ushered out. Someone locked the front doors. Celeste's hands began to tremble. She whispered, barely audible, "What did you do?" I turned to her, voice low and steady. I remembered who I am. The scarf around my neck itched a little more, but I didn't move. It wasn't bothering me. It was reminding me. The conference room was cold, Not the kind that came from air conditioning, but the kind that followed power being rerouted. The air had that stillness you only feel right before something breaks. 2 bank employees sat across from me, both barely older than interns. One stared at her screen like it had started speaking in tongues. The other fiddled with her headset, voice hushed as she muttered something into the mic. Her eyes flicked to the folio, then back to me, then to the screen again. A red banner pulsed at the top of the interface. Transaction flagged. Executive override required. I think, the younger one started, clearing her throat. Sir, I think this might be a system error. I shook my head slowly. It's not. It's very deliberate. She blinked twice, then nodded. Not an understanding. Just recognition that whatever this was, it was no longer hers to handle. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy. Sharp. Celeste. She pushed open the door without knocking. Her eyes went straight to the folder on the table, then to the screen, then to me. This is fraud, she snapped. Shut it down now. The branch manager stepped into the doorway behind her, hands clasped calmly in front of him. It's fully authenticated, he said, voice quiet, but firm, and above your pay grade. Her face flushed, not with rage, yet, with confusion. She didn't understand the language we were speaking, and that made her dangerous. She turned to me, voice rising. Graham, what is this? Some performance? You think dropping a few zeros into a form makes you important? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The screen spoke louder. Shell Core Holdings. Withdrawal pending. $5,500,000. Recipient. Graham Winslow. Status. Locked. Confirmed. Releasing. She stepped forward suddenly, reached for the folio. You think this makes you someone? I laid my hand calmly on the folder, keeping it in place. I don't need to think it, I said evenly. I built it. She froze. Something behind her eyes shifted, like a glass pane catching too much sunlight. Her posture faltered. She didn't scream, didn't slam anything. But her shoulders dropped, just slightly. Her voice didn't come back right away. It was the first time I'd ever seen her unsure. The manager turned to the staff. Initiate full audit protocol, lock non-essential access, and notify regional compliance. He paused, then looked directly at Celeste. Until further notice, your role is being reassessed under procedural guidelines. You'll receive communication shortly. That was code. She'd been frozen out. An alert sounded on her phone. She glanced down. Her face went pale. Internal notice. Temporary administrative suspension. Pending review. Celeste looked back up at me like I'd just rewritten her name in a language she couldn't read. I stood slowly, straightening the folio. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk. This wasn't about winning. It was about being seen by someone who'd spent a lifetime squinting past me. Her voice finally returned, small, brittle. This isn't over. I gave a nod, not agreement, just acknowledgement. Then I walked out of the conference room. The lobby was quieter now, clients being escorted out, security locking the front doors. A few associates stood frozen mid-step, unsure where to look. The sun outside hadn't moved, but the building felt darker. Outside, I passed the row of ATMs. One screen flickered once, then twice, then went blue. System rebooting. Even machines know when things are about to change. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Noah. One line. Level 2 audit protocol activated. Atlanta HQ wants a meeting. I pocketed the phone and kept walking. Atlanta's downtown branch was glass, steel, and polished smiles. It looked like confidence in a suit. The kind of place that whispered credibility, even when it was just covering its own cracks. The building shimmered in the morning sun, reflecting traffic and people too busy to look up. Inside, Everything was cool and curated. Lighting soft. Walls wood-paneled like it mattered what stories had ever been told here. It smelled like lemon polish and formality. I adjusted my scarf. Just a bit. Not for comfort. Out of habit. The elevator dinged open, and Judith stepped out beside me, her tablet in one hand, confidence in the other. "You don't have to speak unless you want to," she reminded me, voice steady. "I want to." We entered the conference room like we belonged there, because we did. Celeste was already seated, pale but composed. Her blazer was navy, classic. Her jaw clenched tight enough to cut glass. She didn't see me at first. Or maybe she didn't register that the man walking in would sit at the end of the table, opposite her, across the distance she'd built for years. An executive from legal cleared his throat, middle-aged, carefully gray at the temples. "Thank you all for coming on short notice." He clicked the remote in his hand. A monitor lit up behind him. Shellcore Holdings. The logo I'd paid a quiet designer from Copenhagen to create 6 years ago. Clean lines, no flair. He continued. "As of this week, legal controlling interest in Shellcore Holdings has transferred to its founder and primary signatory." He turned toward me, then looked at Celeste. "Mr. Graham Winslow." The words fell like lead. Celeste blinked. Once. Twice. She turned her gaze to me, then back to the folder in front of her, flipping pages like maybe the truth wasn't printed clearly enough. Her voice cracked. "Graham, you?" I nodded slowly. There was no anger in me, no gloating, just gravity. "It was never about money," I said. "It was about being heard." Silence settled like dust. Then the compliance team stood from their seats. "We'll begin our internal investigation today," one of them said gently, like this wasn't the professional collapse of a woman whose power was built on assumptions. "Ms. Winslow, you'll be placed on indefinite administrative leave pending resolution." Celeste's chair scraped slightly as she pushed back. She tried to stand, straighten her blazer, say something. But nothing came out. And then, without warning, her knees buckled. Her body staggered back. No one moved to help. No chair caught her. She fell. To the ground. The room didn't gasp. These rooms never do. They just shift in posture, quietly rearranging loyalty. She stayed on the floor for a beat too long before rising on shaking legs. "Let's take a short recess," one of the executives murmured. Everyone stood. Except me. I sat still, watching Celeste as she found her balance again. Not on power, not on reputation, just on the bare floor of consequence. She didn't look at me again. The meeting adjourned 5 minutes later. Judith and I stepped into the elevator. No music played, just the hush of floors passing. I looked at her. She didn't smile, but there was something approving in the way her eyes settled. "You ready to use this for something bigger?" she asked. I stared straight ahead. The polished brass doors reflected enough of my face to see that I wasn't tired anymore. "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." The scarf around my neck felt lighter than it had walking in, like it had done its job. Dallas welcomed me back with dust, sun, and the sound of my apartment's old radiator wheezing in the corner like it missed me. Nothing in the place had moved, but everything felt different, like the walls had been holding their breath and were just now letting it out. I dropped my bag by the door and stood there a minute. The scarf was still looped over the chair where I'd left it. It looked out of place now, like it didn't belong to the man I was walking back in as. Noah arrived 15 minutes later, already talking before he stepped through the threshold. "I've started digitizing everything for the scholarship arm. We've got back-end support ready. Student profiles can load through secure submission. We just need to finalize name, mission language, and rollout timing." I raised an eyebrow. "That all?" He smiled. Give me a few more hours, and I'll make it run itself. He dropped a binder on my kitchen table, more pages than I wanted to see, all with tabs and color-coded urgency. But beneath the logistics, I saw it. Progress. Something being built instead of broken. You want to make a public statement? Noah asked as he booted up his laptop. Not really, I said, pouring coffee that had sat in the cabinet since before the bank meeting. Let the silence speak. Let her wonder. He nodded. You sure? I was. Words wouldn't do what stillness had already started. While Noah typed, I scrolled through archived folders, old contracts, server maps, encrypted logs, digital echoes of a life I'd kept hidden from the people who shared my blood. Buried between folders marked infrastructure and legal proofs, I found a name I hadn't clicked in years. Halifax Ledger. I opened it. There it was. A scanned letter, yellowed even through the screen, addressed to me by name, handwritten. Graham, this is the first deposit. $7,000. Don't spend it fast. Don't spend it loud. Let it grow in the dark. For the one they won't see coming. Granddad attached was a copy of the wire receipt, Shellcore's first heartbeat. I sat with it for a while, read it twice, then a third time. I smiled quietly. He'd always known, long before I did, that it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving that silence wasn't emptiness, it was design. By afternoon, we had the scholarship application portal mocked up. Simple. Director. No need to write an essay about how hard life had been. Just, what do you want to build, and why hasn't anyone let you yet? I scheduled the launch for the following Friday, Winslow Equity Trust. Live. As Noah left, he gave me a look I'd seen before, back when we first started Shellcore in my living room. You're not going to be invisible after this, he said. I was never invisible, I replied. Just quiet. An hour later, a knock at the door. Courier. Brown envelope, slightly creased at the corners, but unmistakable in handwriting. Return address, Lorna Winslow. No name on the front, just mine. No postage. Hand delivered. I turned it over. Pressed into the back flap, faint but real, was the seal of First Grace Chapel. The same one my grandfather had once donated land to. The same church where I sat in the third pew during his funeral, unnoticed. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I placed it on the table next to my grandfather's letter and the scarf now folded once more. Some things deserved to be opened slowly. Her handwriting hadn't changed, still too neat. Still like she was trying to prove something with every curve of every letter. I sat at the kitchen table, early light filtering through the blinds, watching the envelope like it might open itself if I gave it enough silence. It didn't. So I did. The paper inside was thick, cream-colored. The kind she always bought from the church supply store, even for grocery lists. There was no greeting. No, dear Graham. Just her words, like they'd been waiting 7 years to uncurl from her hand. You were the quiet one, Graham. I thought that meant you were okay. But I realize now, you were just surviving. The sentence sat heavy. She wrote about the small things. How she used to hear me in my room typing at odd hours. How I always came to dinner, even when no one asked me to. How I never interrupted. She wrote about Dad's harshness, Celeste's glare, Emily's chuckles that always landed like punches wrapped in pearls. I didn't always know what they were doing to you, she wrote. But when I did, I told myself it was better to stay out of it than make it worse. She called it peacekeeping. I'd always called it absence. I thought I was holding the family together. But it turns out I was just letting it splinter quietly. And you were the one who learned how to walk barefoot across the shards. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper. There were no smudges, no crossouts. She had rewritten this, probably more than once. Maybe more than 5 times. The letter moved from regret to something softer, more careful. I watched Celeste talk over you. I watched you shrink back, and I let it happen because it was easier than confronting how much of your father I saw in you, minus his cruelty. That line made my chest tighten. She ended with the only thing that mattered. I didn't protect you, and I'm sorry. Please, don't become what we were. I folded the letter twice, not out of disrespect, out of weight. I didn't cry, but I didn't throw it away either. I opened the drawer by the sink, the one that once held old keys and unpaid bills, and placed it beside the only thing I still had from my grandfather. His pocket watch, tarnished, but ticking, even if just in spirit. That afternoon I didn't call her back. I didn't block her number either. That was something. Forgiveness is rarely a thunderclap. More often, it's a door left unlocked, just in case. I stood by the window, watched the sun stretch long shadows across the hardwood floor. My coffee had gone cold. The house didn't feel angry, just quiet. I noticed the scarf still hanging by the door. It didn't feel like armor anymore. It felt like closure. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mila Sanderson. Someone sent me documents from inside Crescent. Want to talk? I stared at the screen. The light from outside hit it just right, making the message look like it glowed from beneath. I didn't answer right away. Some conversations deserve the dignity of a pause. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and cheap vanilla syrup, probably a comfort to some. Not me. I was here for clarity, not nostalgia. Mila Sanderson was already seated when I walked in. Late 30s, plain blouse, short haircut, no makeup. The kind of person who never tried to sell herself before she spoke. I respected that. She stood to shake my hand, like we were about to sign something more permanent than conversation. Her grip was firm, dry, honest. "Thanks for meeting," she said. "I've got half an hour," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "But I'm not interested in headlines." She nodded, flipping open a narrow reporter's notebook with the corner curled. "Neither am I. I'm interested in what happens when silence stops being useful." The waitress passed by, refilling mugs with burnt coffee. I didn't ask for sugar. I didn't need comfort. "I got a folder last week," Mila said, tapping the edge of her notebook. No return address, no fingerprints, but it was packed. Transaction records, internal memos, private messages between Crescent execs. Enough to raise eyebrows, enough to make my editor nervous. I leaned back. "Most of it's about the Shellcore transaction," she continued, "but your name only shows up once, tucked in a footnote, like whoever leaked this didn't want you dragged into it, just understood." I said nothing. She slid a photograph across the table, black and white, slightly faded. Two men shaking hands in front of what looked like a county courthouse. One of them was my grandfather, the other, Hal Whitman. "Your grandfather started the first agricultural trust in Clark County," she said. Mid-1970s. It was designed to fund first-generation students, especially kids from farming families who didn't have a way out except dirt roads and prayer. I swallowed. Slowly, she leaned forward. That trust was quietly rerouted in the late 90s, through a proxy board, then a secondary management firm. Eventually, it ended up under Crescent's community engagement department. My breath caught in my chest, not for me, for him. "They didn't just erase you," she said. "They erased him too." I looked at the photo again. My grandfather had a crooked tie, a smile that didn't apologize for taking up space. Hal looked younger, rounder in the face, but the handshake was firm. Two men who believed in something rooted. "So what do you want?" I asked. Mila didn't blink. "To write it, but clean, not viral, ethical. No headlines with betrayal or bank scandal in bold. Just the story. What it means when legacy is manipulated, and what it looks like when someone quietly fights to take it back." I thought about Celeste, about the meetings, the noise, the way she always made sure the spotlight hit her best side. And I thought about my grandfather's hands, scarred from field work, steady when he lifted my chin and told me, "You're not small. You're just not loud yet." "You can write it," I said. She nodded once, slowly, like a contract had just been signed in spirit. "But I want you to know, someone risked their job to leak that folder. They weren't trying to hurt anyone. They were trying to restore something." I looked back at the photo. "Then let's make sure it stays restored." She slid the photo toward me. "You should keep that." I hesitated, then folded it gently, tucked it into my wallet, just behind my license. A quiet place, the kind where roots belonged. We didn't shake hands when I left. That kind of conversation didn't need a buttoned-up goodbye. Outside, the air had warmed. The sun caught on car hoods and old glass storefronts, like the town was trying to remember how to shine without show. My phone buzzed. Noah, Celeste officially resigned, and the bank issued an apology. Quietly. No press release, no spectacle, just the way I'd hoped it would happen. Let them all wonder. Let them all remember who really planted the seeds. Back at Crescent Trust, everything felt smaller. Maybe it always had been. I just hadn't stepped into the room tall enough to notice. The ceiling seemed lower, the marble less polished, the light too deliberate. Like the building had spent years trying to convince people it stood for something it didn't quite believe in. I didn't come through the front this time. Security met me at the side entrance. No badge flash, no delay. A nod, a silent gesture to the elevator. I didn't ask where to go. I already knew. Upstairs, the hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and bureaucratic discomfort. The kind of place where decisions were made in rooms with frosted glass and muffled names. Hal Whitman stood just outside the legal review office, his hand resting on the curve of his cane, like it was more a symbol than support. "Didn't think you'd show up in person," he said, a smile creeping into the corner of his voice. "Figured it was time to stop being a ghost," I replied. Hal nodded. "Your grandfather used to say, 'Quiet men build loud futures.' He wasn't wrong." He handed me a folder. No ceremony, just quiet weight. Inside, a copy of an unsigned original will, old paper, legal phrasing, and one line that changed everything. Beneficiary, Graham Winslow. Property, land parcel 14. A, Clark County, held in trust. I flipped the page. Dated 15 years ago. My name written in careful print, like someone had once believed I'd be steady enough to carry something more than disappointment. "Celeste had it amended," Hal said, "after your father passed. Said you weren't stable. Said you'd disappeared. Nobody questioned her then." He looked at me with a strange gentleness, not pity, just the kind of sadness reserved for people who watched things go sideways and didn't speak up fast enough. "We all thought you were unstable," he admitted. "I wasn't," I said, staring at the signature line left blank. "I was just invisible." Hal sighed. "That's usually enough to get rewritten." I held the document for a while, the paper warm from his hands. But I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel shock, just confirmation. This was the missing piece, the one I always suspected but never reached for, because I didn't want to validate how easily they had erased me. I nodded to Hal. "I'd like it reassigned." "To your name?" "Numbered to Winslow Equity Foundation. It was never just about me." He smiled then. Full, slow, like something had finally landed right. "I'll have Judith handle the paperwork," I added. Hal tipped his head. "I'll make sure it moves faster than the last 20 years. We shook hands. His grip was thin but steady. As I turned down the hall, I passed the desk that used to be Celeste's. It was gone now. In its place, a potted plant and a small plaque that read, "Community Partnership. In progress." I paused, Read it twice. Better roots, I muttered. The elevator took longer than usual, or maybe I just had more to carry in my head than last time. When the doors opened, my phone buzzed. Mom, before this becomes something official, will you just come home? I stared at the message. No punctuation, no plea, just a quiet ask. Some invitations come dressed as confessions. I didn't reply. Not yet. The kitchen looked smaller too. Or maybe it was just her, sitting there with 2 mugs and a face finally older than her denial. The afternoon light didn't soften her. It just showed everything more clearly. She didn't stand when I walked in. Coffee's still hot, she said, nodding toward the pot like it was the only thing worth offering. I made too much. Habit, I guess. I took the seat across from her. The table was the same one from childhood. Oak. Solid. A single nick in the corner from when I dropped my father's wrench trying to fix the radiator. No one talked about the dent. We just let it be. 2 mugs sat in the middle. Hers had a flower pattern faded to pale pink. Mine was plain. Blue. Probably one of Dad's. Neither of us touched them. I read the article, she said. I nodded. Didn't know your grandfather gave you that first deposit, she added, voice lower now. He never told us. He didn't tell me either, not until it was already growing. We sat with that for a while. Then she spoke again, softer. She was louder. You were easier. I took the path of least regret, but maybe I still got regret anyway. I didn't flinch. I didn't reply. She looked older than I remembered. Not frailer, just worn in the places she used to patch with certainty. I thought if I kept peace, everyone would stay close, she said. But we just got quieter. Meaner in the silence. I watched the steam rise from the mugs. The coffee was going cold. You want me to forgive you? I asked. Not harsh, just honest. She shook her head. I want you to know I was wrong, that I saw it. I see it now. Then she reached beneath the table and placed something between us. A small wooden box, cherry-stained. Latch faded. Your father said you had no head for finance, she murmured. Said you were all dreams and no plans. I never believed him. She hesitated, but I didn't stop him either. The box sat like a confession between us. I didn't open it. Instead, I leaned back, took a breath, and let the silence hang without weight this time. I'm not here to fix the past, I said. I just need you to stop denying it existed. She nodded, and for the first time, I believed she understood what that meant. I stood. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't reach out. But she didn't retreat either. And somehow, that was enough. I took the box, not like a gift, more like a truth I was finally ready to carry. Outside, the sun had shifted. The car smelled like leather and old dust when I slid into the seat. The box rested on the passenger side, quiet and certain. I opened it. Inside, the childhood ledger. Frayed, bent, but intact. My handwriting, messy, and determined. My first dream of a vault and a place to keep something that mattered. And tucked beside it, a sticky note. Familiar handwriting. Slanted. Strong. A house built on silence doesn't fall. It hollows. I didn't cry. But I closed the box like it was something sacred. Because maybe it was. The paper had yellowed. Some pages stuck together, softened at the edges like they'd absorbed time. But the handwriting was mine. Small, messy, hopeful. Letters too big for the lines. Ideas too big for the boy who wrote them. The first page had a title, My Vault. Underneath, a safe place where no one has to ask to matter. I traced the lines with my thumb, remembering how serious I was the day I wrote it. I couldn't have been older than 10. I used to sit in my room with a calculator I didn't know how to use, sketching out blueprints for something I didn't have words for yet. That notebook, this ledger, had survived years of silence, moved from box to drawer, almost thrown away, never really seen. And now, it was back. My phone buzzed beside me. Noah, I answered on speaker, still flipping through the old pages. What now? He asked. All was direct. I looked out the window. The late afternoon sun was cutting shadows across the floor, like the world was folding into itself. We build it, I said. Where? Here, in Athens. On the same land she tried to erase me from. Noah didn't ask who she was. He didn't have to. Copy that, he said. I'll ping Judith. While he handled the legalities, I turned back to the notebook. Page 12 had a list of names. Imaginary clients. Kids I made up. Marcus, Lena, Tyler. I gave them problems to solve. I built for them the place I didn't know how to ask for. They were all versions of me, I realize now. The last page hit hardest. When I grow up, I want to be the kind of man who helps others feel less alone. The letters tilted sideways. The marker had bled through. I didn't smile right away. I let it sit. Let it ache a little. Then I whispered, "Almost there, kid." The next morning, I drafted the proposal. Winslow Equity Foundation. New headquarters. Athens, Georgia. I attached a photo of the original trust land, parcel 14A. The same lot my grandfather tried to leave me. The one Celeste signed away like it was a line item. By noon, architectural renderings came in. A modest building, open windows, communal workspace, no gates, no receptionist hidden behind glass. Judith called to confirm the deed was signed. "Congratulations," she said. "That land's finally yours again." "No," I corrected her gently. "It's theirs now." By the end of the day, the press kit had been prepped. Minimal branding, no sponsorships. Just a one-line mission, to offer what was never offered to us. At dusk, I sat by the window again, notebook in hand, tea untouched. The scarf still hung on the coat hook near the door, undisturbed. These days, it didn't feel like armor. Just a reminder of a version of myself I no longer needed. My phone buzzed. A photo from Mila. The foundation sign had gone up. A small crowd had gathered. Neighbors, teachers, a few city council types. Nothing big, just present. And in the back row, nearly hidden behind a red folding chair, my mother, sitting quietly. No umbrella, no fanfare. Just her hands folded in her lap, watching the place her silence once tried to prevent. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I closed the notebook gently and let the day end without weight. The building still smelled like fresh paint and ambition. That crisp, hopeful scent of new drywall and old intentions finally finding a home. The plaque hadn't even been bolted to the wall yet, just leaned gently against a pedestal inside the foyer. But my name was already there. Graham Winslow, founder simple. Clean. No middle initials, no titles. Just a name that, for too long, had lived in the footnotes. Winslow Equity Trust stood at the corner of two quiet streets in Athens, Georgia. Red brick, warm windows, no marble columns or glass towers. The lawn was still patchy, the landscaping unfinished, but it stood. And this time, it stood on land that used to have someone else's signature on it. Now, it had mine. A volunteer in a pressed polo greeted me near the front doors. She looked barely 20, eyes wide with the kind of energy I'd long outgrown but still admired. "Mr. Winslow," she beamed. "Do you want to cut the ribbon yourself?" I looked at the oversized scissors resting on a table nearby. "No," I said, smiling. "Let the kids do it." She nodded, relieved maybe, and jogged off to tell the organizers. Inside, the building was buzzing. Quiet voices, footsteps, chairs being arranged, trays of catered sandwiches arriving. In one corner, a teenager was showing another how to scan a QR code from the scholarship kiosk. Across the lobby, someone adjusted a projector screen for the opening slideshow. I didn't ask what they were showing. It didn't matter. This place wasn't about me. That was the point. I walked down the main hallway. The walls were still bare. That would come later. But in one frame, already hung, already spotlighted, was the scarf, folded neatly, like a flag. Next to it, under protective glass, was a faded deposit slip from nearly a decade ago. Shellcore Holdings, initial capital, $7,000. Depositor, Arthur Winslow. Underneath, a caption, "Let them ignore you. It'll make the reveal sweeter." I stood there for a while, not out of sentiment, just stillness. That quiet where something inside you shifts into place. Footsteps behind me. I turned. It was her, Lorna, my mother. She didn't wear a dress, just jeans, a cardigan, and those soft-soled shoes she used to wear to PTA meetings. In her hands, a covered dish wrapped in a linen towel. She didn't say anything, just walked past the reception table and placed the dish gently on the catering spread. Lifted the towel. Homemade biscuits. The same ones she used to make on Sunday mornings, when things were still gentle between us. Before silence became structure. Before absence became habit. She turned toward me. We didn't speak. She nodded once. I nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't blame. It was something closer to understanding. The doors opened wider as more people entered. A slow stream of neighbors, former teachers, one or two city officials in khakis and name tags. Nothing grand, no podium, just folding chairs and a sense that something real was starting. I made my way to the head of the table inside the conference room. The chair wasn't ornate, just wood and leather, like all the others. But on the table in front of it sat a small, tasteful plaque for those who were once unseen. I sat, not to make a statement, just to fill the space that had once been denied. Mom was still standing near the back. A volunteer offered her a seat. She declined. She stayed by the wall, hands clasped in front of her. Then Judith walked in, calm as always. She leaned down beside me, whispering into my ear. "Celeste is here." I blinked. "She's asking for a meeting," Judith added. I looked toward the lobby, where I couldn't yet see her. Just the suggestion of a figure waiting by the front glass. The past, dressed in regret, always knew how to find the door. Elijah sat with his shoulders drawn up, like the world had been too heavy too early. His jeans were clean, but frayed at the cuffs, and his hands kept folding and unfolding in his lap, like they were waiting for permission to stay still. I remembered that posture, not just in other kids, in mirrors. We were in the small interview room off the main hall. The windows were open. Outside, someone was mowing a lawn. Somewhere else, someone was fixing something with the wrong tool. But here, there was just quiet, the kind that didn't press down. It lifted. Elijah didn't speak first, so I did. "Name," he looked up quickly. "Elijah Moore." "Age?" 17, senior at Clark Tech High. I nodded, clicked my pen, made a show of writing something, even though we didn't need much on paper. Not really. "What brings you here?" I asked. He shifted in his chair. "My mom works nights. Dad's not around. I help with my sister when I'm not at school." "That's life," I said gently. "But what do you want to do?" He blinked. It wasn't that he didn't know. It was that no one had asked like it mattered. "I want to build things," he said finally. "Real things. Not just dreams." "Dreams are real," I said, tapping the desk between us. "You're sitting in one." His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but maybe its cousin. I leaned back. "You know, when I was your age, I wrote about a vault. A place where people didn't have to beg to be seen. I called it my vault. because I didn't have the words yet for what it would become. Elijah tilted his head. You mean this building? This idea, I corrected. This chance. He was quiet a moment. Then, I don't have the grades some people do. Or the clubs. I tried to join robotics, but the advisor said they didn't have enough kits to include me. My chest tightened. Elijah looked down. Maybe I'm not enough. I opened the drawer beside me, pulled out the little ledger. Same one from childhood. Same soft spine. Same half-erased drawings. I flipped to the last page and turned it toward him. Build a house where no one has to beg to be seen. His eyes locked on the line. That's you? He asked. I nodded. That's where we start. This is yours now. His fingers brushed the page like it might vanish if he blinked. I closed the book gently. You're our first awardee, Elijah. The first official name on the Winslow Equity Trust list. Not because you had the best resume, but because you came here without pretending. His breath hitched. Barely, but I caught it. You're gonna do fine, I said. You already started. Outside the office, I heard the sound of laughter from the hallway. Someone telling a joke that didn't need explaining. I smiled. We stood. He extended his hand, still nervous, still young. I shook it, firm and quiet. As he walked out, I glanced through the library glass. There it was, the chair. Same wood, same curved back, sanded and stained, but unmistakable. The one I used to sit in beside my grandfather, while he read aloud from the Sunday paper. Back then, it felt too big for me. Now it felt right. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mila. Your story is ready for press. You want to approve the headline? I looked around. The building was full of life, not volume. Life. It was quiet in the park. Just wind, grass, and the kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention, but keeps it anyway. Not the hush of absence, the hush of things that don't need to prove they exist. I walked the same path I used to take with my grandfather, back when I had shorter legs and more questions. The gravel still shifted underfoot the same way, and the trees along the path still leaned a little east, like they knew something about direction the rest of us hadn't caught up to. The bench was still there, worn, weather-creased, steady. I sat, the old savings ledger tucked under my arm. For a moment, I just let the wind run past. It was mid-morning, and the sun hadn't fully warmed the air. The world was awake, but not rushing. I opened the ledger for the last time. The pages curled at the edges, and the ink had faded to soft gray. I flipped slowly, past imagined balance sheets, past rough sketches of buildings, past names of people I once swore I'd help if I ever made it. And at the very back, tucked between the last page and the binding, was a note. I unfolded it with the care usually reserved for family photographs or love letters too old to reread. The real withdrawal is never money. It's your name, your voice, your loyalty. Take it back when they waste it. Granddad, I let the words sit for a while, not as revelation, as confirmation. This whole time, through the bank freeze, the boardroom silence, the foundation ribbon, and Celeste's exit, I hadn't been fighting. I'd been remembering. Not revenge. Return. I pulled out my phone, opened Mila's last message, still waiting. Your story is ready for press. You want to approve the headline? I typed 4 words. Headline approved. Title it. The Quiet Founder. No signature. No need. I placed the ledger on the bench beside me. Let the sun hit its worn cover. Let the memory of every version of myself that wrote in it exhale and finally sit still. A bird landed a few feet away, brown-feathered, small, blinking into the breeze. It didn't look hungry, didn't flutter, just present, like the ones I used to feed with Granddad, back when lessons were disguised as slow walks and folded bills. I smiled. Not the kind you wear for others. The kind that lives in your chest for a moment and then dissolves into the air around you. No more vaults, I whispered. Just doors. I stood, tucked the ledger under my arm, and walked back up the gravel path. The scarf wasn't with me, not because I'd lost it, because I no longer needed it. There's something about a southern fall that makes you notice things slower. The way the pecan trees drop their leaves one at a time, or how the morning air sits on your skin a moment longer before slipping away. These days, I spend more time in stillness, not hiding, not pausing, just letting the world come to me at the pace it was always meant to. The foundation is quiet in the early hours, a few lights on. Elijah often shows up before his shift just to sit in the reading room. We don't talk much. We don't need to. My mother stops by sometimes, not every week, but enough. She brings cornbread or peach jam, sets it down without fanfare, and stays just long enough to remind me that not everything broken stays that way. We don't talk about Celeste, but I think about her. I hope she's somewhere learning how to start over without burning what she touches. That's her story to write now. I'm not trying to rewrite the past. I'm just building something new on ground that used to belong to someone who believed I could. That's enough. Sometimes I walk the halls of the building and touch the old wood trim with my palm, just once, just to feel the truth in it. I don't hear applause. I don't need it. This isn't a victory. It's an arrival.